Hey everyone, and welcome back to Titanic. Today we're going to experience what the sinking of Titanic was like for the third class passengers on board. Now, we're going to take a third class passenger's perspective on this. And the simulation is going, we're headed for the iceberg. But I'm going to give you some information beforehand, because we have some time to kill. The first third class passengers didn't come up on deck nearly as quickly as the first class passengers did. So, we should actually wait a bit for the simulation to play out before we can actually pretend to come up on deck. But in that time, I want to give you some information on the whole third class passengers being locked down below story. Because it's quite complicated and nuanced. If you watch the 1997 movie Titanic by James Cameron, that movie very strongly implies that members of staff were actually very actively trying to lock up passengers to prevent them from coming up on deck. That's not entirely true. That's not entirely how it actually happened. The thing is, there were gates, there were barriers, there were bars set in place to segregate classes. So first class was not allowed to mingle with second class, and second class was not allowed to mingle with third class. And of course, third class was not supposed to mingle with first class. Now, this was actually, apart from the whole class system, there were a set of immigration regulations in the United States, there's the iceberg, that stipulated that the different classes had to be physically separated from each other to prevent the spread of diseases. This is obviously a bit of a backwards regulation now, because the assumption obviously was that third class passengers were prone to carry diseases, which is a bit of a of an elitist thing to say. But obviously hygiene was a problem in these days, and it was very likely that third class passengers suffered from diseases more than first class passengers. That's simply how it was back then. So classes were segregated. That meant that wherever you could access one class from another, the one hallway leading into another, second class leading into third class, there were barriers. And those barriers were closed, as they should have been. They were supposed to be closed to keep classes from intermingling. And those are the closed gates you see in Titanic. But, in the movie, staff did not actively lock people down in order to prevent them from coming up on deck. The movie very much gives you the idea that people were left to drown, which isn't really what happened. There was a very, very valid effort to actually guide people up on deck. They wanted women and children first. Obviously, they were a bit concerned that everyone coming up on deck at once would crowd the lifeboats. So they tried to get women and children up on deck first, escorting them through the second class spaces, first class spaces, towards the lifeboats, in small groups, ushered by a steward or something like that. But third class passengers were absolutely allowed up on this bit right here. You could freely move towards the third class aft staircase and go up. There was no one or nothing barring you from getting up on deck. Now, once you're up here, you can't actually go towards second or first class straight away. There is a set of stairs right here, and another one on the other side. But above, right here, it's not here in the model, but there was a very small barrier, just about the same height, just a little lower as this railing. A small swinging door, a barrier, a gate. That was to prevent second class from, entering third class and vice versa. It was a very simple metal gate, and you could very easily just climb over it. But people in those days, especially third class, were so used to being barred from areas, not allowed to be there, that this small fence might as well have been a massive cast iron portcullis preventing their way from getting up here. There was a barrier there. They were not allowed to be there, so they didn't go there. It's as easy as that. Now, obviously, as things became more delicate, as the ship began to sink, as the stern began to rise, as people began to notice that, oh dear, this is going wrong, they started climbing over. They started climbing up the cranes. They started climbing up ladders. A couple even went through the D-deck dining saloon and up the grand staircase. So it was very much possible to make your way to the lifeboats from third-class space. It's just that these little barriers, just closed doors, signs telling them not to go a certain way, just discouraged them from making their way up to the lifeboats. There were gates that were closed, there were locked doors, there were people at those doors telling them to go aft, to go to the aft staircase and make their way up here, but they were not kept below, locked, just so first class could get a better shot at boarding lifeboats first. First class just had the luxury of being right near the lifeboats, as did second class to a degree. That's primarily why so many casualties were in third class. There was also another problem. Many of third class were immigrants, and many of those immigrants were not English. Many were Scandinavian or French or Spanish or German or Dutch or whatever. They did not speak English, and in trying to make their way up on deck without actually knowing what was happening, just in the confusion after the collision, as people started, getting up, stewards started making rounds, knocking on doors, urging people to get up and put their life vests on. You know this if you've watched the movies. Many of the passengers didn't understand what was going on. The stewards tried to tell them, but they had, some 2,800 people, I think, in total, 2,200 people, 22, I think, people. They had to tell 2,200 people what was going on. They were hurried. They were probably confused themselves as well. They also didn't really know what was going on. All they knew was that passengers had to get up, put their life vests on. And passengers who didn't speak English, trying to ask questions, they were at an automatic disadvantage. They couldn't read the signs. They wouldn't know where the exits were. And, Titanic down below, among the cabins, especially in third class, it can be quite a maze. And it might not be very obvious which way you have to go in order to make your way up on deck. So that's a bit about what it would have been like as a third class passenger to try and make your way towards the upper deck. Right, so as a third class passenger we have now come up on deck, and this is the scene that would greet us. This is what we would come up in, basically. We can see that the situation is very serious and we need to take action. We need to get up here. The situation is dire enough now. We can see that we're going to ignore the sign that was on here. Do not enter. We don't care. We want to get off this ship. We know where the lifeboats are. We are going to get aboard a boat. But... oh dear. All the boats are gone. At this point, as a third class passenger, we have no chance. Maybe we can find a boat up forward. Shall we try? We'll try and see if we can find a collapsible still on board. Let's try and see. Oh dear. There goes a funnel. No, look, there's water coming up. We can't go here. Even though there is a boat right there, we don't want to risk it. The water is freezing. The ship is going down. We need to... Our instinct is telling us to go back. This bit is high up. It's dry. It's relatively warm. It's warmer than the water, at least. We need to move. Look, everything is flooding. We need to get out of here. We need to move back. We don't want to move up too high because, you know, some of the boats may return. Some of the boats might come and pick us up. The collapsible that was just floated off, it's rowing away, but surely boats are going to come back, right? We're just here, just by the water. Surely they're going to come and pick us up. Oh dear. Oh dear. Doesn't look like it. They don't seem to want to return. Perhaps I'll have better luck on the other side. Let's try it. Oh dear, no. It's even worse here. No, this is bad. This is really bad. Yeah, we need to get out of here. At this point, every remaining passenger on board Titanic would have started running aft. Started making their way towards what was in their eyes the safest part of the ship. The instinct of many people was to stay on board the ship as long as they could, which was probably the right instinct. It was probably the clever decision, even though an awful lot of people still died. It was just too cold, and the boats were gone too far. Even with staying on board as long as they could. Look what's happening. Look at that. The entire first class stairway is now submerged. And there goes the second funnel. Right, we need to move. We need to make our way aft. She's going fast now. You can see she's starting to go. Oh dear. Something is happening. This is terrifying. Oh dear, there we go. She's breaking up. The sounds are absolutely terrifying. What's going on? Something is happening. Right, we need to move. We need to get up here. Now this is where most people would have been at this point. On the aft well deck, or on the poop deck where we are now. The last of the funnels just went. Oh dear, we need to hold on. Can we hold on this winch? Oh dear. We're very high up in the air now. And there we go. On our way down. How absolutely dreadful it must have been to be here. To hear the screams of everyone around you. There we go. I can't even move away if I wanted to. All I can do is hold on to this winch. To this capstan. And there she goes. Taking care not to let her drag me under. And that's it. That's Titanic gone. On her way to the seabed, 3,800 meters down below. And there we are, in the water, screaming for help, screaming for rescue. 1,500 people thrashing around in the water. One can only imagine the sound. Absolutely dreadful. And only a handful survived. of the people that went into the water at the end, I think only around 6 were picked up by lifeboats. One lifeboat came back to rescue people, but they were too late. The water was too cold. People were drowning or dying of a heart attack or freezing to death. These boats seem quite nearby, but the simulation has it wrong on this front. The boats were away by several hundred meters, and there was just no way they were going to save anyone. Just 6 people. So that's it. That is Titanic as a third-class passenger. I hope you enjoyed it, even though, enjoy might be a bit of a strange term to use. I hope you found it immersive, educational, perhaps even entertaining. I do plan on doing more Titanic content. I really love Titanic. It's so fascinating. I find it such a fascinating subject. If you want to see more of Titanic or anything else, just let me know. This is probably going to be the last part in my Experience Titanic As series. For now, I've done a first-class passenger, I've done a third-class passenger now, and I've done Charles Lightoller. If you can think of anyone else, a character or a passenger or a persona that I can experience it as, that I can, experience Titanic as, do let me know in the comments. If you want to see anything else, just let me know. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.